Good evening. Is this on? Yes. Okay, here we go. So welcome to our informational meeting, and welcome to those of you who are joining us online as well. My name is Drew Gentile. I'm chairman of the elder team. Let's pray. Lord, let this evening be a celebration of what you have done among and through us this past year. Help it also to be a time of refocusing on you and what you have for us. Let it be a time of reflection, anticipation, and unifying around your purposes for us. Thank you for the privilege of serving you in this corner of New Hampshire. Grant us wisdom, grace, and unity as we seek to know you better and make you known among those with whom we live, work, and play. In Christ's name, amen. So those of you who are joining us online or can't come to the Sunday morning meeting itself will be able to vote online after this meeting until about noon on Saturday. Also, the recording of the informational section of this meeting will be available online until Saturday. Tonight's question and answer period will be streamed live for those of you who are joining us, and you'll be able to send your questions in. But the question and answer period will not be recorded. Okay, so I'm not going to say anything else. We have a whole series of reports. And so Sandy, Joel, Christy, Mark, Dave, and Dan and Mark will be the first runs up. So thank you. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. So we'll have ministry reports to begin with. 25 minutes approximately. Then we'll have a financial report. And then we'll discuss the bylaw amendments. So they're two very small, short ones. And then we'll discuss the election of elders. Those three pieces, the financial report, the bylaw amendments, and the election of elders, will be three pieces in the ballot that you'll be voting on in the course of the week or next Sunday. So after we've gone through those things, then you'll have a chance to ask questions, and hopefully we'll have some answers. Thank you. Okay, so Sandy.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. You'll see my bullets up there, but I'm adding a first bullet that we'll put up on the screen for Sunday. But looking back and looking forward, it's kind of still new, is that this time last year, February 14th, it was Valentine's Day, that Cheryl Martin told me she was going to step down from kids ministry in a few months. And so that started our search for a new assistant kids ministry director, and Stacy Farley has been on for 9 months, so it's still her new year. So she's done great so far, and she hasn't been a whole year through it. So we are so grateful for Stacy. She brings a lot of life, energy, great ideas, and she just loves kids and families and wants to point them all toward Jesus. So thank you, Stacy. The next thing is Trail Life. It is a new endeavor that our church has undertaken, and it's under the leadership of Ed Graham, who has two young boys. He's been working on it for over a year, and they started Trail Life on January something, the very beginning of January, and I see Dave Casto here in his uniform. So there are 25 plus boys downstairs, and it's pretty quiet, so they're probably outside, I'm thinking, but there are 25 plus boys downstairs right now in Trail Life. And I took this off their website. This is what Trail Life is: a church-based, Christ-centered, boy-focused mentoring and discipleship journey that speaks to the heart of a boy. Established on values and truths derived from the Bible and set in the context of outdoor adventure, boys from kindergarten through 12th grade are engaged in a troop setting by Christian male mentors, where they're challenged to grow in character, understand their purpose, serve their community, and develop practical leadership skills to carry out the mission for which they were created. Our program right now goes through 6th grade, starting a little smaller, and as kids age up, a grade at a time, something like that will be added. So it's just amazing to see these men and these boys, kindergarten through 6th grade, having fun together. But I'm trying to stay away. I went once. They don't need, this is a program for boys and men. So I sat in the corner and just observed, and I was teary-eyed when I saw those boys stand, say the pledge to the flag. And the male mentors expect them to be respectful and just are. It's just in such a beautiful way. These kids are being mentored. I was teary-eyed. There were so many beautiful moments. So I'm grateful for that. And the last bullet I have is about a biblical worldview. And as family ministry and kids ministries, we've been studying what a biblical worldview is for years, and we've been implementing a biblical worldview in our teaching. Our teachers are amazing, but over the years, I have stood here and I've read stats to you plenty of times. The one big stat that I'm just going to repeat again is that a child's worldview is established by the age of 13. Your worldview was established by the age of 13, whether it was biblical or not. So that's why kids ministries is so important. A biblical world a biblical worldview is a set of beliefs, assumptions, values based on the Bible, and it determines how a person lives. In other words, how I live out my life should reflect what the Bible teaches. The most current, just this past year, research shows that in America, in general, and in churches, a very small percentage of people hold a biblical worldview. This is in churches, too. Here's some stats. 2/3 of parents of infants through 12-year-olds claim to be Christian, but only 2% of all of those parents actually possess a biblical worldview. The younger a parent is, the less likely they are to have a biblical worldview. And I put together, I didn't give you the percentage, but there's just a whole little list of these. A low percentage of Christian parents believe that Jesus was sinless, that the Bible is accurate, the only way to get to heaven is through Jesus' work on the cross, and on and on and on. I could blow your mind, and it's devastating research. So, you will be happy to know that here at FCCO, in Kids Ministries, we teach a biblical worldview. Our mission in Kids Ministries is to assist parents in leading their kids to a personal relationship with Christ. So it's the parents' role to teach their kids, but we're here to equip parents to assist them. And one thing we're doing, Joel's going to talk about milestones, but we have a milestone class coming up for parents just on biblical worldview. What is it and how they help teach their child. So we're doing a lot. We've got loving, caring adults who teach our kids on Sundays, Wednesday nights, Monday nights, and are teaching the Bible truths to these kids. So much more that we're doing, but that's just a little update on where we're going these days. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Sandy. Hey, everyone. It is good to be up here tonight. And I'm excited to report that God is moving amongst our students, which is a huge blessing. And it'd be really exciting to come up here and be like, man, we have an exciting new direction. But new and exciting isn't always what changes lives. As Eugene Peterson borrows from Friedrich Nietzsche when he says, discipleship is a long obedience in the same direction. And this is our goal for our students. We're continuing on in the direction God has called us to ultimately see the result of young adults who have a lifelong relationship with Jesus. So here are some areas where God's moving among our students. For years, we have talked about growing young as a church, and God's moving in this area. If you show up here on a Sunday morning and you look up in the tech booth and you look back there at the cameras and boards, and you're going to see students serving on a weekly basis. And it's not just with worship and tech, or with tech, it's with worship, it's with kids ministries, it's in missions. God's using our students It was said on Sunday, as the church of today. They're not the church of tomorrow, they're the church of today. And so God's really using them here in this church, and they're serving, they're involved, and they're working side by side with the adults of our church, and that's a huge blessing. If you see a student serving, please make it a point to acknowledge them and encourage them in that, because that's an awesome thing. Students are also involved in events like the men's retreat and the Beast Feast and other events where they're learning and growing alongside adults. So they'll continue as a church to invite students in your sphere of influence to join you in events like those where we can all grow together. We're continuing our D6 intergenerational class, and I think Mark's going to be talking a little more about that. But, one of the things we're looking forward to this year is looking just to see how we can continue to tweak this class so that more students can get involved, and they're really the best possible growth and community opportunities for everyone involved. So we're looking at that and really seeing where God's leading us there. Throughout any given week, we can see anywhere from like 50 to 60 students between worship services, serving at youth group, and just getting involved in the life of the church. And that's just in grades 7 through 12. So praise God, students are here, and that's a huge blessing. Another area where we're continuing in is our discipleship groups on Wednesday night. Last year was our first year that we launched our first full year of discipleship groups, giving students the opportunity to dive deeper in their faith. We have 3 groups. Our 7th and 8th grade group, which really lays a strong foundation of faith and challenging students to grow deeper in their relationship with Christ. Our beta group, which is led by, where's Roger? Is that Roger in here? Roger's right there. Roger and Joseph Wasson that do such a great job. This is a group where students who just want to drop in, maybe can't always make it, but they want a place to be challenged by God's word. They go into the book of Matthew this year. So that's been awesome. And then our discipleship group for high schoolers who are ready to really dive deep and be challenged in what they believe and how to live it out. I got an email from a parent earlier this year of a student who came home from our discipleship group one Wednesday night, and they said it was the first time the student had done something at church that made them want to go home and look more deeply into what was discussed. So a huge blessing. Students are being challenged to really grow and live out what they believe. And it's exciting. We're seeing more and more students who want to get involved on Wednesday night in our discipleship groups. If everyone who's been here this year showed up on a Wednesday night, we'd be a group of 50 students and leaders gathered and growing together, including 5 new students who have really gotten, not coming up from 6th grade into 7th grade, but 5 new students that are coming and staying plugged in this year. So that's really a huge blessing. Sandy mentioned faith milestones. Faith milestones, we're really excited about this because this is a way for us to help equip parents and families to help them grow their children as disciples. It's a roadmap to equip them to lead their kids and their families as God has called them. And this includes milestones from birth all the way up to high school graduation, and these include parent-led components such as devotional times, special events with their children, celebrating milestones such as graduation and first Bibles and things like that, but as well as church-led events such as first Bible ceremonies and celebrating graduates and more. And each milestone really is aimed to help parents take the lead in guiding their kids in their faith with the support of the church. So that's a real blessing. We're excited to just be able to better walk beside and equip parents to lead their kids as God has called them. So that's a little bit about what's going on here in student ministries. Thank you for your prayers and your support because God is moving in our students.
Hi, I'm Christy Thomas, and I am the Deacon of Caring Ministries. Oh, I don't like these. My name is Christy Thomas, and I'm the Deacon of Caring Ministries, and I'm going to be sharing the Caring Ministry report for Sue Bolton. Sorry. No, I could do it. Okay. I just have to get used to it. Okay, good point. Francis Schaeffer said, "You can put the Bible in the public square and it will stand on its own." William Thomas said, "Be careful how you live. You will be the only Bible some people ever read." Where is the public square in Carroll County? For Sue, it is the Ossipee Roundtable run by Joy Gagnon. Sue's biweekly participation in the Ossipee Roundtable has proven an excellent way for FCCO to discover and meet some of the needs of our greater community in partnership with other community leaders. Needs such as helping to care for the homeless, strategizing to provide affordable housing, meeting practical needs of individuals and families through our benevolence fund, and offering the use of our church for community-oriented gatherings like children's playgroups and supervised family visits for reunification, just to name a few. Roundtable leaders have expressed their gratitude for FCCO's commitment in Ossipee and Carroll County. In one way, Sue sees attending these meetings as taking the love of Jesus and the Bible into the public square and letting it speak for itself. Another community ministry recently launched is Grief Share. One of our members, Mark Cartier, asked Sue how we support the bereaved after a celebration of life service is held. Sue shared she sends out a series of 4 booklets journeying through grief over the course of the following year, but that she hoped one day to bring Grief Share to our church. Sue encouraged Mark to attend the Grief Share group in Meredith, which he did. Mark returned offering to bring Grief Share to our church. With that, he reached out to 3 individuals to invite them to join the leadership for this ministry, one of whom attends another church. In December, the one-day event of Surviving the Holidays was well attended. In January, we launched our first 13-week support group, which is running now. We have 10 to 12 attendees per week. In addition to being a safe place for attendees to share their grief and learn of healthy ways to cope with it, it is also a place for attendees to hear the gospel. Last week, we offered to give a Bible to those who needed one, and an attendee went home with a Bible that day. This group will run twice a year. The next time will be in the fall. Also, we recently relaunched the Joy Seekers Ministry under the leadership of Terry Toll, Sue Dorian, and Ann Duguay. Joy Seekers is a ministry that helps widows connect with each other while discovering the love and purpose God has planned for them as they journey through this next season of life. They meet 2 times per month. They alternate between a fun event, like a Valentine's Day dessert potluck, and a meeting focused on support and practical ways to handle the new challenges that come with widowhood. Together, these 15 women are seeking and finding joy again in beautiful ways. Then they always welcome new members. Sue is pleased to say that Roots class, Life's Healing Choices, has subsequently resulted in men and women participating in Celebrate Recovery step studies. The CR step study is the greater work featured in the 8-week class. Through step studies, participants find Christ-centered healing from hurts, hang-ups, and habits that can often impede our growth in Christ. Right now, we have a group of 5 men and a group of 7 women going through these steps together. Both groups are still open. The work takes 9 months to a year and requires some prerequisite work. It is no small commitment, but it is well worth the effort. It is our prayer that eventually God will call some of these participants to help lead and relaunch the weekly large group CR meeting. We invite you to join us in this prayer. Thank you for being a church that cares so well for others, in the name of Jesus.
Christy, you did fantastic, held that mic well. And Christy, if you didn't know, is our deacon of Caring Ministries. She is speaking on behalf of Sue tonight, who is away, but she will be back for the annual meeting on Sunday. So as you know, we are an incredibly active church. There's a lot going on here. And we're going to talk more about our priorities later, but one of them is walking humbly with Jesus. And I think that's a big part of what adult ministries is about, helping us to walk closely with Jesus. And one of the theme verses that we have, and we continue to go back to, as I pray, this is from Ephesians 3:17. I pray that Christ will be more and more at home in your hearts as you trust in him. May your roots go down deep into the soil of God's marvelous love. And that's what we want to foster in adult ministries. And one of the ways we do that in a variety of ways. You've heard many times about growth groups, but I just want to mention again 20 or so growth groups that are going on. And we have an incredibly dedicated team of growth group leaders. We meet as leaders, we meet 3 times a year just to encourage one another and to train. In this last, about a week ago or so, we got together and to talk about how do we keep our groups fresh, and how do we keep vitality within our groups. And it begins with us as leaders. And I will tell you, these leaders love Jesus and they love the people that they're shepherding. And so I'm so thankful for each of our leaders. We have, in this last year, fully developed our Roots team. Karen DeJagger came on to be the coach of our Roots ministries, and that includes Starting Point, the Bible survey class, which I was just in Sunday, and man, there was some incredibly robust conversation going on. There were people in there saying, and George and Mary Beth are leading that right now, saying, I've been in the church for 20 years. I never knew how this fit together before. And it's so exciting to see light bulbs go on. So anyway, Starting Point, survey of the Bible, Purpose-Driven Life, those are 3 that meet on Sunday morning, and then Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace, as well as Life Sealing Choices that meet Wednesday nights. These are short-term classes throughout the year, and Karen DeJagger has been working to develop a team of leaders for each of these classes. That's happened and has been fantastic. One of the things that we are looking at for this next year is to refine our offerings for Sunday morning. Those of you that have been here for a while know that we had Sunday morning communities many years ago, 3 of them going on. There's probably 100 or so folks involved. And we made a shift to growth groups. Those communities were still going on, and then COVID happened. And COVID really in many ways, took them out. We made a shift to D6, which was an intergenerational class. And what we're realizing is that as good as that class is, and some incredible teaching, Craig Borno and Eric Diamond, Joel Gill to teach some really incredible teaching, but we're realizing that there's some things that need to be revisioned there. And we need to look at the adult offerings that we have on Sunday mornings and potentially look at how we can create more community within those groups and maybe even offer some more communities. And so we don't have answers for that yet, but that's something that we're going to be working on and hopefully have some answers to in the fall of 2024. And then our men's and women's ministries really are in full swing. I'd say these have been a couple of years of rebuilding. We have a solid men's ministry team in place now. We've had 3 breakfasts over the last year or so. We've talked about spiritual friendship. We've talked about spiritual health. We talked about sexual purity this last time. And they have been awesome opportunities for 60 or 70 guys to gather each time. Our mission in men's ministry is, and man, I did not bring my glasses up, so Lord help me. But anyways, yeah, thanks, Drew. Help me out here. See if I can find this. That's better. I just got to find out where I wrote it. Our mission is men following Jesus, leading in family, work, and life. And that is happening. So Trail Life didn't come specifically out of men's ministry, but is very tied to men's ministry. And it's exciting to see guys rise up and take off in that ministry. Caring Hands is being revisioned out of that ministry. And there's a whole new group of guys getting involved in leading that ministry, which has been exciting. And then the women's ministry, super exciting to see what's happening there as well. Taryn Davey has just become the co-women's ministry director alongside of Kathy Cooper. They've raised up a group of women. They've been putting on desserts this last year. They've got a dessert coming up, which is called Abiding in Christ. It's going to be a paint night in a couple of weeks. They have their first off-site retreat in May coming up, and that's the first time they've done an off-site retreat, at least since I've been here, and I know the women are super excited about that. So it's exciting to see, we've been 3 years out of COVID now, and it's exciting to see some things really, ramping back up to where they need to be. We've got work to do, but there's a lot of really wonderful things happening and plenty of opportunities for people to get involved and grow deep roots. So thank you. Dave?
Got my readers. Good evening. It was an exciting year in missions this year. Nepali people and churches were blessed by a global worker we chose to support yearly. The Go team hosted a virtual event from Voice of the Martyrs that opened our eyes to the harsh realities of many Christians in various parts of the world. We were all moved deeply and encouraged to pray steadfastly and urgently for our global brothers and sisters. In Bolivia, using a projector and speakers donated by FCCO, new missionaries are being trained right now. Conferences are being held in multiple cities right now, and the Jesus film is being shown. The Go team also partnered with the youth group last year during a conference that focused on world hunger, from which the youth raised funds to sponsor 2 Haitian students for 2 years through the Bethany Project. And a memorial fund provided for serious dental work for one of our global partners, and a meeting place was secured for a new Persian-speaking church plant in Europe through a different global partner. And last, a young adult was launched to work for 5 months in Costa Rica. So a lot was going on. God, like Joel said, God is working here and elsewhere. So each year we send out questionnaires to our global partners to inquire about things like what the Lord is doing in their ministries. This last year we asked for data. Or do you say data? I say data. Drew? Data. Great, we'll go with data. No, this is exciting. This year's budget supports ministries who reported these results from last year. All right. The number of people that are missions, the number of people are missionary partners. The number of people, say it again, the receiving humanitarian aid was 80,740. New converts or significant spiritual conversations, 75,586 people. New Bible studies or mentoring relationships established, 141. The new churches, or like these new cell groups that were started just last year, 8 new churches planted. So God is doing stuff, and it's very exciting. And I wasn't thinking until just like now, why is God? I don't know. Not because of us. I think because like we talk about having a proper stance when engaging the culture. And we also want a proper stance when engaging the Lord. And part of that is, we trust him completely and we will obey completely. And so we will go wherever he says. We'll do whatever he says. I think he knows that, and he's honoring our attitudes as a church. So speaking of that, and lastly, the Go team is, we're very excited because we sense the Lord is leading us again to work side by side with another global partner, reminiscent of how we have been used by God to partner with Jonathan in South America. We are praying about where he wants us to go. And we have been in talks with Kevin in Africa, but we can't say anything conclusively now. But I'm asking you all to pray for the Go team and pray for the elders as we're seeking the Lord in this. We know God is moving and we want to follow him. So please pray, because I know that God wants all of us involved with what he is doing next. I know that he wants some of us to go. I know that he wants all of us to pray and support what God is doing here through humble attitudes and through prayers. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to speak to 3 congregational church-wide priorities for this year. And they're going to sound familiar because some of these priorities are annual. They just keep going and going because this is what Christ has called us to. And the first is walking humbly with Jesus. After Easter, we are going to have a sermon series on the book of Micah. And the key verse in Micah is 6:8, where we're told, he has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. And last year, we worded this priority differently. We called it giving Jesus our first love, but we're borrowing directly from Micah, and we want to strive together, to focus together, to walk humbly with Jesus this year. And that means us as a church leadership, but it means all of us as individuals as well. Second is raising up the next generation of mature disciples. And this is what Jesus has called us to do. He's given us the Great Commission to go and make disciples of all the nations. And that begins within the church family. We disciple one another. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago in a sermon. We are to teach and admonish one another. We're to expect and help and encourage each other grow in Jesus Christ. And then the final one has to do with loving mercy, and that is engaging our culture with grace and truth. And that has been a priority of ours for the last couple of years. And God has placed us in this community at this time of life, and we are living in a very difficult period. Culturally, there are so many things going on, but it's also a very exciting time to live because our faith is being tested. God is strengthening us as a church, and we are to be Christ to this generation, to reflect his image, and we want to do that well. And that's all I'll really say about these things tonight, because these are the focus areas of our sermon next Sunday. Mark and I will both unpack these in more detail next Sunday morning. I do want to shift to a couple of elder priorities. These are things that the elders are very committed to, and one is campus development. And we have made some progress on this. Paul Ferguson is our deacon of campus development. As a church, we have retained the services of Tony Fallon, an architect. He actually designed this building, and he's just a great friend to our church. And we've had a series of meetings with over 20 different, we call them stakeholders, but leaders in all different areas of church ministry. And we heard their dreams, we heard their needs, what is working, what is lacking in our facilities, and we got quite a list. And so we're trying to sort through those, and that will take some more time, but we'll update you as soon as we can on more specific. One area we need to change is the microphone situation, apparently, but we'll be bringing an update and talking about different things with you soon. There are three things that really are on the front burner, and one is stage, refreshing the stage of our worship, redesigning it, and some redesign here in the sanctuary. And then our office building is very inadequate for our needs, and it's very old. And for example, like if four of us turn our air conditioning units on at the same time, we lose power in half the building. So there's a lot of things that need to happen. So we're looking at options for that. And then the youth facility needs to be expanded. And Joel said, about 50 to 60 students a week are coming through, and they're outgrowing the facility that they have, and we want to give them the room that they need to do the ministry God's called them to. Mark's going to come up now and talk about leadership development.
Sure. Yeah, second priority that we have as elders is in this area of leadership development. And, a number of the leaders that we have in our church who have served in significant roles in the life of our church came here as developed leaders. And we have benefited greatly from the way that God developed them at other churches. This year we have three of those folks who have served God's church faithfully, who are actually going to be stepping off of our elder team. One is Jim Cooper, the second is Dave Glidden, the third is Fred Berger. And so we're really saying to ourselves as elders, man, we've benefited. Now we need to be a church that is also pouring into leaders and developing leaders right here so that we can raise them up in our church, but also potentially even send them out if they end up going to another church. And so in this next year, that's a priority that we have as an elder team. How do we do leadership development well? And one of the things that we've talked about is bringing back our Leadership Essentials class, which is something that we've offered a couple of times. It's borne great fruit, and we'd like to continue with that. We've also talked about different mentoring opportunities, as well as some hands-on training. And we don't have this all figured out in terms of what it looks like yet, but this is a priority that we are going to be working on as a team, and not only raising up, developing leaders, but developing the next generation of leaders as well. None of us getting younger, right? And we want to continue to develop the next generation of leaders to lead at this church. So I believe that concludes our ministry reports, and we're going to move on to our financial report.
Thank you, Mark. Once again, I just had the great privilege to share that we finished 2023 extremely strong. It's just really is humbling to be able to be looking each month at the faithful giving of our people, and it's just a wonderful endorsement and recognition of how committed the people of this church are to the mission and outreach of this church. So last year, you provided more in tithes and offerings than our planned budget. That's the short word about that. We'll get into the detail here in a minute. But the generosity of the church family extends into missions, which we've talked about, disaster relief, future facility needs that were mentioned. We're truly a church. You are truly a church that seeks to bless and to serve others. Thank you for that. I'd like to share a minute with how your tithes and offerings are managed by the church. As a church employee, our assistant treasurer, Joe Wilbur, provides a daily steady hand and advice for the pastors, for the staff, and the elders, as well as for our deacon of finance, Fred Holbrook, and the other financial team members, Paul Ferguson, Dave Gleason, Skip Metz, and our newest member, Terry Teets. The finance team meets monthly to review trends and issues. They provide great wisdom, each of the finance team members do. And so it's helpful for guiding us throughout the year. The pastors and elders are also a key part of the financial guidance of the church, reviewing income and expense trends and needs at each business meeting, which is about 17 times a year that we meet as a team, looking at business, besides our weekly prayer. If you have any questions about any aspect of 2023 spending or our 2024 budget we'll look at in a minute, please save those, jot them down, and we'll talk about them in the Q&A section of our meeting. So looking at this fine summary report, you can see we exceeded our income budget by $26,000, but we also exceeded our expense budget by $16,000, and that was purposeful. And why was it purposeful? Well, we knew that we're going to end up with a net income of almost $10,000. By shifting some expenditures we knew we were going to do early in 2024 into December, we were able to reduce some of our spending in 2024 for planned spending, but we were able to reduce the budget. Each year we purposely manage expenses very carefully throughout the year. As we get nearer to the end and we can see what's available for spending, then we make an informed decision about do we go forward with this or not. And so at the end of December, we were underspent by $12,000 from budget. So through November, we had spent $12,000 less than the budget through November for the year, and which was good because we had brought in $17,000 less than budget year to date. Not unusual, it's very typical. When we moved into December, and particularly after December 17th, our Giving Sunday, we were able to see that, yes, indeed, once again, the faithful giving of this church, we were able to meet budget, exceed budget, so we were able to do some of those discretionary areas or move some things into 2023. So we were able to invest some money into maintaining the carpets of this building in a better way, and then we've been able to do that. We were able to invest in a new snow blower so we could have more safety for not just the people clearing the snow, but also for everyone coming into the facility during the aftermath of snowfalls. And we also were able to pay for half of a kids ministry conference that was in January, move that into December. So that was some of the blessings of exceeding budget from the giving standpoint. Some other highlights on the expense side of 2023. Payroll expenses were under budget due to changes in staffing, but we also had some increased operating expenses, as some of which we've mentioned. We also had some unplanned property taxes on the traditional church, which in this year we're continuing to work on some legal defense of what we believe is a wrong decision by the town to tax us on that building. So we're working on that. Moving to the 2024 budget proposal, that's the next slide. We propose to increase income and expenses by $70,732, or 6.5% more than last year's budget. Sounds like a big reach. But if we balance that against actual income that we had, operating income for last year, it's a 4% increase. So that's one data point to keep in mind. Personnel and global missions are the largest portion of our church operating budget, and each year our policy is that we're going to honor the people who work directly for the staff of this as staff in this church, as well as our global partners, by increasing payroll expenses and global missions expenses by 3.2% this year. That's what the Social Security guidance was for COLA, for cost of living increase. So that's what they got this year. Last year was quite a bit more, and because it was so much higher last year, we were very conservative in some of our spending goals for the year. And we'll talk about some of the things that are going up this year because we didn't have to increase the COLA quite as much as we did last year. Now let's look at some of the other major expense components. Operating expenses are anticipated to rise about $14,000 from the 2023 budget, and that includes $9,000 that we've budgeted for capital improvements. We had nothing budgeted last year for capital improvements. We were able to do some of that because of increased giving near the end of the year, but this year we're trying to be purposeful about having that in the budget. We have almost $3.5 million on our books of physical plant, and that takes, over time, there is maintenance that has to be done. Roofs, heating and air conditioning, sprinkler systems, and so forth. So we need to be constantly looking at what's it going to take to do a proper job of maintaining this space. Last year, we also, as I mentioned, added funds for this coming year for legal costs of contesting the property tax on the traditional church. Insurance costs have gone up a fair amount this year. And we've had some other additional planned expenses on repairing of equipment, like some major repairs to our lawnmower, our main lawnmower. We've increased ministry teams by almost 10,000 going into this year, but that we had cut it 8,000 last year. So we're really back, not that much higher than we were 2 years ago. Why is it up? Well, we're planning on a ministry marriage event in 2024, so there's funds for that. Dan talked about some of the need for increasing and improving some of the impact on the stage background. One of the things before we had that big picture change and capital program that might affect that, we're looking at adding a capability to project different backgrounds on the cyclorama in the back. So there's some money for a projector to do that. And also we had the remainder of the expenses for the kids ministry conference that was in January. Global outreach, as we mentioned, increased 32%, a 3.2% increase in their budget for the year. So again, that's the COLA increase. And we've also were able to provide a small increase for our local outreach partners. That includes Cornerstone, LifeBridge, White Horse Addiction Center, as well as Camp Sentinel. And we have not been able to do that for several years. That was a good blessing that we were able to do this year, if the budget is approved. The operating budget will increase, as we noted, $70,732, but the planned budget is $54,000 more than the actual income from last year. Another data point that's important to recognize is that in December, we received a special tithe of $57,000. It was a real blessing. And when that came in, we already knew we were going to meet our budget for the year. So we decided this was a good thing to put into a capital improvement fund. So that we, again, it's an area that we have not been able to, in years past, do the amount of investment and saving as we could. So that was a good blessing there. So we moved that. We also, on December 17th, we tithed the special giving day, $10,000 into the benevolence fund from that giving. So if we added those two events, $57,000 plus $10,000 into the operating income, we would have, total giving last year would have been $1,184,000, or about $22,500 more than we're budgeting for the 2024 income. So in other words, we don't believe that this is such a large reach. The giving of this church demonstrates over the last several years, and we'll talk more about that, that this is appropriate for where we are right now. Again, if you have some questions, jot some notes, and we'll talk about in the question and answer area. So we spent about $10,000 less last year than the received income that was put into operating income. And our total income increased overall, but that enabled us, we'll move into the cash assets. So you see a figure down there at the bottom, $667,000. It sounds like a large amount of money, it is. But there's about $214,000 now in the capital improvement fund, or we've at times have called that the building fund, but it's really enabling us to do things like pay for the architect to do some preliminary work, look at some repairs that we need to do, and so forth. $214,000 of the 67, that's is not part of our operating reserve. There's another major fund that we get some income from, but we can't touch, so it's not really a part of our available cash assets. What's available is $305,000 at the end of December 2023. So that's our operating cash reserves, and that's about just over 3 months of church income. So if we were to have some kind of major economic reversal, we have about 3 months of operating income. Good church management practices say between 3 to 6 months is what you should have in operating reserves. So we're on a healthy side. We've been there at 3 months, give or take, for a few years. So we've been very blessed there. Moving into the benevolence fund, that's a little bit of an eye chart, but the key messages here are that collections from in this fund were $43,488 in 2023, and we gave money for Turkey earthquake relief, humanitarian relief in Turkey, over $5,500. Over 67 family units in this church and community received assistance for things like automotive and other needs, housing-related costs, food and gas cards, or counseling and medical expenses and funeral-related costs. So at the end of December, there was about $8,400 remaining in that fund, roughly what the year started out with. If you think about operating income that we talked about, the benevolence fund that we were just talking about, in addition to those, total giving include, as we mentioned, the capital improvement fund, this gifts that this church gave towards Pastor Dan's sabbatical, various memorial gifts, the bistro night and other contributions to deep freeze, and donations for Haiti from the 30 Hour of Famine. The total giving by this faithful community in 2023 was $1,214,000. That's a tremendous amount of money. And I believe that the staff and the elders of this church, the other financial leaders and ministry leaders of this church are deeply grateful for that endorsement of us and our stewardship of that. And our commitment is that that will be well managed. It has been well managed. Now, based on the current needs and the major increase, let's look at the next slide. Looking at this is again an eye chart, but if you go back to 2018, you see some major gifts. There's a second line of that chart going through 2023. Take out the major gifts, and you'll see that the last 3 years were the most consistently giving years of this church, from normal tithes and offerings. This church has never been more blessed and that's a reflection of the ministry that's going on here. And thank you for that. Based on the current needs and the major increase in giving last year, the elder team and the finance team believe that the proposed 2024 budget is appropriate. It's about 4% above the actual income that we recorded for last year, 6.5% above what was actually budgeted. The elders and staff of FCCO, as we say, have been really blessed by your faithful commitment to the church family, to the ministry of this church and the outreach of this church. And we're excited about seeing the impacts your faithful giving will enable us to do in 2024. Thank you, and it's been a pleasure to be able to bring such good news. Thank you.
Hello, church. Hey, I've been asked to review the bylaw amendments, which we are proposing to you. You will find those on the screen in just a minute. And what you will notice is that they're really not major changes. They're allowing us to cross some T's, dot some I's, and just fix some things that just don't make sense. So let's go over those. The first one you see is Article 2.2, and it currently reads, "The annual meeting shall be held prior to the beginning of the next fiscal year with a time and place determined by the elder board." Well, the problem with that is the annual meeting is Sunday, and the fiscal year began back on January 1st. So you can see how that doesn't quite work. So what we're proposing, and you can see the highlighted changes there, is that the annual meeting shall be held during the first quarter of the new fiscal year, which this clearly falls within, with a time and place determined by the elder board. And then the budget cycle will commence in the first month after the budget is approved at the annual meeting. If necessary, the budget may be adjusted at a special meeting and take effect as specified at that meeting. So we're simply wanting to come in line with what we're already doing with that one. All right, the next one, Article 3.5.3b, and what's going on here? Let's see. Currently, in addition to re-election by the congregation at the end of 3 years, the elder board will conduct an annual exam and a recommitment process for each elder in order to maintain accountability. And it keeps going on, and it says the lead pastor shall be a standing member of the elder board for as long as he holds the position of lead pastor. Well, that works pretty well. The problem is it doesn't mention any other pastors like Mark. So if we were to follow how it's actually written, if you look at our the bylaws, it actually requires that an elder take a sabbatical year every 7 years, a year of rest from the elder board. So right now, that would say that Mark has to take a year break from the elder board every 7 years. And that's obviously not what Dan does, and that's not in the best interest of the church. So we are looking to change that. And you see the proposed change. I'm just going to read what's highlighted there. It says, any pastor appointed to the role of elder in accordance with paragraph 3.3.1b, is exempt from the one-year sabbatical requirement of the paragraph as long as they serve in their pastoral role. So again, in that instance right there, we're looking to have Mark on the elder board just as long as Dan is, without having to take that year sabbatical every 7 years. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing with the amendment bylaws. And I was told to entertain questions you might have on the bylaws at this point, if anybody's thinking of things that don't make sense or things that you'd like explained a little bit more. All right. It's not the sabbatical. Oh, can you say the question one more time? Because we're broadcasting this and people need to hear the
Does
question.
that mean Pastor Mark Svensson doesn't get to go on a sabbatical?
So we are not talking about the sabbatical in the sense that Dan took time off to go on a sabbatical. This is following the biblical practice of every 7 years there's to be a rest. And this is designed more for a non-church employee, such as myself on the elder board, where I can do 6 years of elder service, but after that, I'm supposed to take a year sabbatical rest from that service before I'd be eligible to serve again. So we're talking about sabbatical in that sense. Sure? All right, we'll get a mic over to you.
Just a question on the First Amendment adjustment.
Sure.
It says the budget may be adjusted at a special meeting. Would that be a special congregational meeting?
Yes,
Or would that need to be added, just so that's clear?
that might be something that should be added, yeah. Thank you. We've got another one behind you, Mr. Bowling.
Is the term of an elder then 3 years?
The term is 3 years. That is correct. That is correct.
So that's every elder but Mark then? Is that what we're saying by this case?
Correct.
Called the Swenson exemption.
He is special. Yeah, here.
Would it be more, should it say at the very end, specified at that meeting? Referring to the special meeting in the previous part of the sentence? Instead of the meeting? I don't know.
Sure. It was asked, should the wording be, if necessary, the budget may be adjusted at that special meeting? Is that what you said? Yes, that would clarify it nicely. Thank you. All right, if you think of something in the meantime, we do have another Q&A session coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to speak briefly to the question of the election of elders. It's already been mentioned, elders serve a term of 3 years, may serve 2 3-year terms, and then have to take at least a year's sabbatical. There's no guarantee, of course, that they'll come back on. So what we have at this point has already been mentioned. We have Jim Cooper and Dave Glidden, who are leaving the elder board at this point. Actually, they've served 5 years. That was a planned rotation in order to keep all of the elders from running off the end of the 6-year period at the same time, right? So Jim in particular, as most of you know, has been involved in the various leadership councils in the church since approximately the year 2000. And this church has been well led for years and years, and Jim has been one of the key leaders in the longevity of good leadership in this church. So I want to thank Jim for that. Dave Glidden has also been involved in a variety of leadership roles in the church over the year, particularly in the financial area, and he's leaving the elder board at this point as well, like I said, after 5 years as part of the planned rotation. Fred Berger is leaving. Yes, thank you. Fred Berger has served 1 term, and he has elected not to stand for re-election. And so these 3 gentlemen are rotating off of the board. And I do want to just make a comment briefly. The nomination process, I think most of you are aware, everyone in the congregation, particularly the leadership, are invited to make nominations. We actually had approximately somewhere between 15 and 18 names of people who were submitted. We carefully considered those names. Actually, 8 men entered the process, and at this point, 2 have completed the process in time for this meeting. And those 2 people, as you're already aware, one is Phil LaRoche, right, and George Bowling. George is here. Phil is off enjoying vacation at the moment. But George, most of you probably know George because he's had a long history close to the church down at Camp Brookwoods. And Phil has been in the area for 20-some years, so many of you know him from his building management and property management and real estate things. He has come to us in the last several years from Madison Church. And so these 2 gentlemen have completed all the processes the elder board goes through to assess whether or not God's calling them to leadership. And so we have affirmed that, and now it's up to the congregation to confirm that. So that's basically where we are with that. So at this, unless there's any, I think at this point, unless anybody, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I knew that's why I was stumbling around. I thought I'd forgot some. Eric is standing for this 2nd term. So Eric has completed his 1st term. And as a result, it's a natural process that whenever an elder completes the 1st term, they stand for election for the 2nd time around. So Eric is willing to stand for the 2nd time. And so he is also on the ballot. So there are 3 men whose names will be on the ballot. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now at this point, we will begin our formal question and answer session. I will probably not answer most of the questions personally. I will defer them to the local expert. So at this point, you are free to ask questions on any of the topics that we talked about tonight from any of the ministries. You can go back to bylaw amendments, financial report. In particular, Dave left that open, or any of the other questions that may come up. This session is going to be streamed, and those of you online may forward your questions. Judy will forward them to us. This session will not be recorded, however. Okay. Any questions? George, can you bring a mic up here? Well, okay. We got. Okay, please state your name and go ahead and ask your question.
I'm